Hello and welcome to Big Friendly Grub. I hope you are safe and I hope you are well. Now at the time of recording we're still in the coronavirus lockdown, but I wanted to focus on one of the positive things for me that's come out of this lockdown. There's not many, but there are some. And one for me is that it's afforded me a bit more time and a bit more desire to kind of experiment with my cooking again. I'm always like making things for the channel and stuff like that. But for myself, when I'm not filming, I don't tend to spend a lot of time cooking and stuff like that for myself. I tend to do what's quick and easy generally, just because after a day of work, I don't usually feel like cooking a hell of a lot. I try and save it for the videos. But now that I'm working from home and literally I finish my working day and I walk in from my bedroom into here, and I can start cooking. So I've got a bit more time and a bit more urge to experiment with things. And I wanted to do something a bit different today. I'm going to make something that I haven't made before. I've had a rummage around in my fridge and in my cupboards to see what's in there. And I've decided to make something completely off the cuff, something that I've not made before. And I wanted to film it and just to show you how easy and how fun it can be just to experiment with what you're making and using stuff that's in your cupboards. So I had to look in my fridge and I've got some red onions that I haven't used that I need to use, otherwise they'll start to go off. So I've decided I'm going to make myself a red onion and feta cheese tart. So I've made tarts and things like that before, but I've never done a savoury tart. So I'm really liking the idea of making this. And what I'm hoping is that it will show you that you can make something of an evening now, experiment a bit and have fun with it and still come out with something fantastic that you can do on a weekday evening. It's Monday today, I think. Yes, it's Monday, I'm losing track of the days. So I'm hoping this will show you that you can make something super nice of an evening and not spend too much time over it and have something great. So I'm going to get started. It could be a horrible failure, I don't know, but this is what it's all about. It's about experimenting with your food and seeing what you've got in the cupboards and see what you can make from it. So let's see if this works. I'm going to stop holding these now. Let's get started. So for our tart, first things first, we're going to need a pastry case. So I've got here a really nice flan tin, which I'm going to use, and I'm going to need to get this lined with pastry to create our case. So I'm going to put this to one side, and here I have some frozen pastry. Well, it was frozen, it is now defrosted. It's had a bit of time out of the fridge where it has been defrosting, and this is ready-made pastry. There's absolutely nothing wrong with using ready-made pastry. This is shortcrust pastry, not puff pastry, and this is perfect for making our base. So I am going to get this rolled out. And I've got my heavy-duty rolling pin here, which I'm going to use to roll out my pastry. So I've got my pastry rolled out. It's probably about a good inch bigger than my flan case all the way around. So I am going to get this lined gently over here, drape this over, try and roll it over, there we go. And I'm going to get this pressed into all the corners of my case. What I like to do sometimes is take some excess pastry and just use it to press it into the corners. Because I'm going to blind bake this, I'm going to leave a bit of an edge on the top to account for shrinkage of the pastry. So I'm going to trim off about round here. That has to be the absolute worst way I've ever trimmed a pastry case, but this is what happens when you do things on the fly. You kind of wing it. I mean, I'm always winging it, but more so today. And I'm just going to put this into the fridge for about 10 minutes to firm up before we do the first part of the blind baking. While my pastry case firms up in the fridge, I'm going to prepare my onions. So I've got 4 red onions here, and I've already peeled them and halved them. And I'm just going to slice them all lengthwise, like so, because these are going to create some really nice, jammy, sweet red onion filling for our tart. There we go, I've ended up with a nice load of onions. It looks like a lot, but realise that these are going to sweat down when we are cooking them. They're going to let out all their natural sugars and create some really nice sweet jammy onion, and we're going to help them become even sweeter by adding some brown sugar to it as well. It's going to be a lovely sweet and savoury tart. Right, my pastry case has had 10 minutes to chill in the fridge. That's going to help it cook to a better shape, and now I'm just going to poke some holes into the bottom. This is to stop it from rising up too much, so we hopefully get a nice thin and crispy tart case. There we go, plenty of holes poked in there. They're not right through, they're just kind of pressed into the surface. And now I'm going to need to line this with some baking paper. Best way to do that is just to do this. Get that all around the edges. And I'm just going to weigh this down with some of my baking beans. If you don't have baking beans, then dried rice or dried pasta works just as well. And now this can go into the oven and blind bake for a good 15 minutes at 200 degrees C. Right, while the pastry case is blind baking, we can go ahead and make our super duper really tasty extra jammy onions. They're so good they'll stop your grandma complaining about her bunions. excuse me, Mary Poppins covers aside, we're going to get started with our onions. And what I'm going to need to do first is just pop in a nice big chunk of butter. And that is some serious butter going on there. But these are going to help make our super duper, no I wouldn't do that again. They're going to make our onions even richer and super jammy. Right, with my butter melted, I'm going to tip in my onions, try and get those all coated in that butter as best as I possibly can. Then over a medium heat, I'm going to let these cook and soften down for about 10 minutes. If you've got a lid, pop her on. Right, I've moved my onions over so I can get my pastry case out, and it's had 10 minutes blind baking. So what we do now is we take this away. So you can see that it hasn't actually shrunk down too much, which is good. Now don't worry about the top of it, we can tidy that up. Once it's had another 5 minutes in the oven, baking even further, this is just going to brown up this base. So back into the oven with this for another 5 minutes. This is a good time to check on our onions, and you can see those have softened down quite a lot. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to give these the last 5 minutes of the time that the pastry case is blind baking. This should see that these are nice and soft, and then once we've dealt with the pastry case, we can sort these out. My pastry case has now had another 5 minutes just to brown up a little bit further, a little bit more shrinkage over here than I would have liked, but overall it's not bad. I'm going to put this to one side now, let it cool while I finish off my onions over here. Right, I've moved my onions back over to the right hob because that's my favourite hob, and if you don't have a favourite hob, then don't worry, you will at some point. Everyone does. So to make these onions even sweeter and jammier and more delicious than they are already going to be, I'm going to add in some brown sugar. Brown sugar! As the Rolling Stones once sang better than I did. So I'm going to add in probably about a couple of tablespoons worth, which I'm reckoning is going to be a couple of handfuls. I think that's going to be enough. We're going to want to offset the sweetness with a bit of sharpness, so I'm going to add in what amounts to a couple of tablespoons worth of balsamic vinegar. So I'm going to say that's a couple of splashes. And I'm going to mix that all into our onions. You can smell that vinegar along with the brown sugar, and it's just such a lovely contrast of flavours. Now I'm just going to give my onions another 10 minutes or so to reduce down that vinegar and just become even stickier and jammy than they already are. My onions have had another 10 minutes, and you can see they've become super jammy and they smell incredible. The only thing I haven't done is season them, so I'm going to give them a quick pinch of salt, and these are good to go to one side to cool down for a bit. Now before we prepare the other part of our filling, I'm just going to want to tidy up my pastry case. So what I'm just going to do is trim off some of the excess from the top here as carefully as I possibly can. There we go, that's the pastry case trimmed down. It's not the best case I've ever baked, but it's also certainly not the worst case I've ever baked, so I'll take that. So I'm going to put this to one side now, and we can get on with the other part of our filling. We need the feta cheese for our feta cheese and red onion tart. Now for our feta cheese and red onion tart, we are of course going to need some feta cheese. So I'm going to tip this in there like that. So I'm just going to crumble up the feta. Now, as I said earlier, I'm not just going to crumble up the feta and just throw it on top of the tart. You could do that. That would be a lot quicker. But what I want to do is I want to add in DOS eggs, 2 eggs. The reason being is because I want to create kind of like a almost souffle-like top that will puff up and become really nice and rich. So I'm going to mix this in and squidge it in to our feta cheese. So that's mixed quite well into the feta. Now I'm just going to add some volume to this by adding in some sour cream. I've got 200 mils worth of sour cream here, which I have left over from the quick cheesecakes I made the other week, depending on when this video goes up. So like I said, I'm just using what I've got in the cupboards and in the fridge. And I'm just going to mix this into here as well. So that looks quite nice and smooth now, but I'm not quite done because I've got some basil here that's looking quite sorry for itself. It's off my basil plant. The stems broke, so it started to wilt a bit, but I don't want to waste it. So I'm going to chop off the stems, really finely chop this basil. I love basil, it's my favourite herb. It smells amazing and it tastes amazing in many things, especially when you just put it on pizza. And I'm going to just slide that into there as well. Then I'm just going to finish this off with a few twists of black pepper. I'm not putting salt in it because feta's already quite a salty cheese, so I don't think it needs any more. It's a bit of a mishmash of stuff, but that's the whole point. I'm experimenting to see how this goes. It could be great or it could be an utter disaster. So we're now ready to construct our tart. So I'm going to put in a layer of these onions into the base of our tart case. You can see how jammy and sticky they look now. There we go, we've got a nice layer of onions in the bottom there now. And now we just need to add in our feta cheese top. So I'm going to pour that all over there, smooth it out a bit, just try and get it over all the onions. Carefully place that onto the baking tray again. I should have had that on there before I put the filling in, but like I said, I'm winging it. Now this can carefully go into the oven at 180 degrees C for about 30 to 40 minutes, I think. I'm going to put this in carefully because if I spill any of this over the case, we're going to get a soggy bottom and Mary Berry won't be very happy. We'll be back in about 30 minutes. I'm going to check it after then, but I'm going to be keeping an eye on it the whole way. Right, it's been about 30 minutes that this has been in the oven, and let's have a look at it. Oh, that's not looking bad. It feels like it's set in the middle. It's almost like a quiche-like top because of the eggs. It's puffed up a bit, but it smells really good. So I'm going to leave this to cool down for about 10 minutes now. Just enough time for it to cool down and for me to be able to handle it and get it out of the tin. And then we'll give it a go. It's probably one of these ones that's going to be nice hot, but also really good cold, I think. It's going to be interesting. It's a complete experiment. So I'm just going to let this cool down for a bit and then we'll give it a go. Right, I've given the tart about 10-15 minutes to cool down, but I can't wait any longer. I need to cut in it to see how it's turned out. It looks pretty good. Aside from the crack on top and the odd coloration over this one side, it looks pretty good. So I am going to cut myself a slice. The proof is always in the eating. Oh, that doesn't look bad. That doesn't look bad at all. I'm going to get my hand out the way. You can see we've got a nice layer of our filling there, and then a nice big layer of onion, and then you've got the pastry under there. See how it's baked. Oh yeah, that's a pretty good bake underneath. That is a pretty good bake, if I do say so myself. So for an experiment, that doesn't look too bad. But it's got to taste good. This will be all for naught if it tastes like rubbish. So I'm going to give it a go right now. Right, there we go. One feta and red onion tart that I've cobbled together from stuff that's in my cupboards, stuff that's in my fridge. I think it's mostly fridge. Was anything? Yeah, there was stuff in my cupboards. It's brown sugar and stuff like that. See, I completely forgot what I was putting into it. It was so experimental. I was winging it completely. But it smells really good. You can really smell those onions in there. So I don't want to talk about it too much because, to be honest, I don't know what it's going to be like. I've not made it. It's a complete and utter experiment. So we're just going to have to dive in and see how it is. Here we go. Oh, yeah. Oh, you really get those onions. You get that super sweet jammy onions. Those are so nice. And you get a slight hint of the feta. Just a little bit of tang in there. I think this will be even better when it's cold because I think right now you're just getting all the heat from those onions. So I think this will be better when it's cold, but it still tastes really good. Can't really taste much of the basil in there. It may come through more when it's cooled down. I think you'll get an even spread of the flavours. The base is really nice. It's nice and thin and crispy, and it's really good. It's a really good red onion and feta tart. And yeah, it was a complete experiment. Completely winged it, but it just shows you what you can do on an evening during the week with stuff that you've got in your fridge, that you've got in your cupboards. You cobbled that together in like, it was about 2.5 hours, but that took me that amount of time, including getting set up for filming and everything else. But I'm sure it will take you a lot less time. I'm sure you could do it in less than 2 hours, but it just goes to show what you can do. It's experimenting, it's getting in the kitchen, it's looking to see what you've got in your cupboards and going, let's see what I can do. Just think about what you've got in your cupboards and I'm sure you'll come up with something amazing. This was an experiment and it's turned out really well. I think I can improve on it. I could go back to it, I could do more with it. But for something that I've put together on the fly, it's really good. I'm really enjoying it. So I'm gonna go off and finish this for my dinner. I hope you enjoyed the video. It's a little bit different, but I hope you found it useful. I hope you found it like something to make you think, go, what can I do? What can I do with what I've got in my cupboards, what I've got in my fridge? I'm sure you come up with something amazing. Experiment, that's the joy of cooking. That is what gets me into the kitchen every time. It's trying something new and seeing what I can come up with, or just taking something I've done before and trying to improve on it. It is one of the purest pleasures in life and it is such a good skill to have. So get in the kitchen and see what you can do. And that's it from me today. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you found it useful. And as always, if you enjoyed it, give the video a like, subscribe to the channel, all of that. Otherwise, I hope you're staying safe. I hope you're staying well. And I will see you next time on Big Friendly Grub. Take care. Bye. Hey, yeah, it's the next day after making this. And I thought, I need some lunch. I'm going to have this for lunch. I'm going to have it cold for lunch and see how it is. And it's actually really good cold. In fact, it might be better cold than it is hot. You can now get like the feta cheese and also the basil that I put in there as well. So that comes through cold, but you still got the sweetness of the red onion. It's just really, really good. I thought it was only fair to give it another go cold, and yeah, it's really good. So highly recommended for lunch, dinner, or breakfast if you're feeling fancy, because it's lockdown and who really cares?